Welcome, listener. This is Sebastian Nothwell here today interviewing RK Ashwick. Hello.
Hi!
We are here today to talk about A Captured Cauldron, sequel to A Rival Most Vial, a cozy fantasy romance between Ambrose and Eli, two potion makers with wildly different approaches to their craft.
Yeah.
So, when did you know that Eli and Ambrose's story would continue beyond A Rival Most Vile?
So I always knew I wanted it to be a trilogy just because at the time when I was writing Rival, that's just what my mind defaulted to. I was like, oh, obviously all series are trilogies, which is so not true. But that's just what I went with. But I didn't have a solid idea of what the other two books could be until I actively started brainstorming close to when I was finishing Rival. I had a rough sense of like, oh, these are the kinds of adventures they could go on, but it did take some drilling down at that stage.
So it was less a process of what do I do with them now, and more a process of what can't I do with them?
Yeah, I guess so. I knew, well, I would talk about it more, but I also don't want to give spoilers for book 3. The premise of book 3 is something that I think was always kind of solid. Without giving away too many spoilers, I knew I wanted the Rosamond Street merchants to, at some point, have to become an adventuring party.
Oh, heck yes.
Because I think it's something that they're both suited to and so not suited to. And I wanted to see them bumble and also, like, I wanted that dynamic. And so that's something that we'll see in book 3. Book 2 was like, okay, what's the bridge to get there?
I mean, who hasn't been playing D&D and wanted to bring their favorite shopkeeper along?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. You get it. You get the vibe.
So that said, what can readers expect from A Captured Cauldron? I feel like there's a lot in the title, but...
There is, yes, there is definitely going to be more Ambrose and Eli. We are still in their POVs, but this time we are also adding Dawn's POV because she has a sapphic romance subplot, so that's very exciting.
Fantastic.
Yeah, as she deserves, frankly. I knew when I was writing book 1, I knew that book 2 had to have a romance for her, so that's definitely in there. You'll, of course, get the other merchants on Rosamond Street working together. You will also get Ambrose being Ambrose, which is to say that he's too smart for his own good, and also, surprisingly, jelly on the inside. That is always very fun to explore, and basically that's something I explore across all 3 books.
One of my favorite flavors of protagonist, honestly.
Yes. I need to see that little man in all sorts of situations.
Exactly.
It's the least I could provide. And then in terms of art, readers will also get more diagrams in the middle of the book, just like book 1, and some new chapter icons. Because, of course, Eli's icon has changed a little bit. Without giving away too many spoilers, it reflects what he's currently doing. And Dawn, of course, had to have a chapter icon.
Excellent. So, giving some mild spoilers for A Captured Cauldron, I am so psyched for PotionCon.
Yes.
What inspired you to bring our favorite potioneers to their very own convention?
Yeah, PotionCon was actually something that I introduced in a prequel short story for Ambrose. I don't remember exactly how I came up with the idea for PotionCon. It's basically like an academic Comic-Con for potioneers. And so the prequel short story, which is called Welcome to PotionCon, is about Ambrose going to his very first potion convention, which takes place in the city. And he's very nervous because this is him as like a teenager. So he hasn't yet inherited the shop. He's not a very social boy. He loves potions, of course, but he doesn't know if he's going to really fit into this crowd because it's very social. It's very much people networking along with talking about potions. So that's a very fun short story. That's free on my site if you want more PotionCon. But I knew that I couldn't just leave PotionCon in a prequel story. I knew that I wanted Ambrose and Eli to go to PotionCon. And so that's kind of like the first big setting that we see in the book. It's not a through line for Captured Cauldron, so I don't think it's a major spoiler. It's really just like, hey guys, this is where we're starting. But I think part of it was inspired by, Sebastian, I'm sure you've seen these, but Tumblr posts talking about how unhinged academics can get when they're debating certain points in their field. So we're talking about like Tolkien experts getting into like fist fights. We're talking about like archaeologists and historians like flipping tables over things. And I was like, I have to see that in a professional potion context. Like I can't not explore a little bit of that.
Absolutely. Truly, academia is at its best when they are.
Yeah, when they're ready to punch each other?
Yes, when they're ready to punch each other over points of argument that the general public did not know existed.
Yes. Absolutely. It's like, have you ever seen the, like, short story about an orangutan completing a murder, but the orangutan is, like, such a huge point of, like, discourse that it literally can no longer be discussed anymore?
Yes, I was about to bring up the orangutan story. It is Murders in the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe, and
I thought it was a Poe story.
apparently you are not allowed to bring up the orangutan in arguments.
Yes.
At Poe conventions.
So, like, that's the vibe that I wanted, at least for the debate section of PotionCon, which is the part that I think naturally has the most, like, conflict. The rest of it is all, like, you know, potion demonstrations and Q&As and panels and things like that. And so, because there's not a lot of story going on there, it's hard to really explore those in a book, unless we wanted half the book just to be Ambrose at PotionCon. Which I, you know, even though it's a cozy fantasy, I didn't want to drag it along that much. But yeah, so the debates is really the big part.
That said, if you need material for newsletter freebies.
I was literally, okay, right before coming on this, I was literally just thinking about it. I was like, how can I give people other windows into PotionCon? Because I feel like people are going to say, oh, but I wanted to see more PotionCon. And I'm like, dude, the story has to move along. I'm so sorry. Ambrose has to do things.
We have to keep going. Ambrose, too, wishes he was still at PotionCon. However...
Absolutely.
Segueing neatly into our next question. I am so psyched for Ambrose to get kidnapped.
Yay! Me too!
Not really a question, but I will say, the titular plot development of A Captured Cauldron is very exciting for certain readers.
Yes. It's my kidnapping story, but cozy, I swear.
Exactly, a cozy kidnapping.
Yeah, it's a cozy kidnapping. Yeah, I know your question is like, what inspired this particular plot? It's also Tumblr posts. So I'm such a loser, Sebastian. So I don't know if you...
I'm right there in the Tumblr trenches with you.
So I don't know if you ever saw the post talking about, like, scientists kidnapped by evil villains, and they were like, so if the scientist is supposed to make death rays, freeze rays, whatever, why don't they just make, like, a big confetti cannon? Because the villain doesn't know anything about science, and the villain doesn't know what they're doing, and so the scientists could be building literally anything, as long as it looks like a freeze ray. And so, like, you know, why don't they pull the wool over the villain's eyes like that? And I was like, oh, I wonder what Ambrose would do in that situation. And then it just immediately just devolved from there. I was like, oh my god, what would Ambrose do in that situation? Like, if he was kidnapped to make this potion that he doesn't want to make, it just opened up a bunch of opportunities about, like, how does Ambrose in book 2 act when he's separated from Eli and Rosamund Street, now that he's gone on the emotional journey in book 1? What would Eli do in that circumstance? What would Rosamund Street do in that circumstance? Who would Ambrose meet? How does this kind of antisocial little potioneer, you know, like, how does he make allies? What do those allies look like? And so, yeah, it really just all kind of, you know, spiraled from there, I would say.
Suddenly a book appeared. So what were some of the challenges and rewards in crafting this sequel?
So we did touch on one already, and it's making kidnapping cozy. Really early on when planning this, I was like, oh my god, I can't make this too dark, because I still wanted it to be a cozy fantasy. I do have to kind of tread lightly. So, you know, it's not a kidnapping in where, like, Ambrose is tortured for information or anything. He's actually given a very nice state-of-the-art, like, workspace, and he's, you know, like, fed 3 meals a day. His main issue, I think, is isolation and kind of the hanging threat that these criminals, you know, they've been watching him, they know his routine, they know how connected he is to Rosamund Street now, and they're like, you know, that's kind of the threat that keeps him there, is like, they could be hurt if he outright refuses to help the bad guys. But that's really just because I needed a reason for him to not just, like, waltz on out of there and be like, nah, bitches. I'm not doing this. So I think once that's established, we're not harping heavily on that. We're more harping on Ambrose seeking information, seeking communication, and he does obtain an ally in that relationship and that dynamic with the ally. That is Nat. She is a servant down in the criminal syndicate. She is a grumpy teenager, and Ambrose quickly becomes kind of a mentor / dad figure to her, and that was very, very fun to write, and I think that element is actually pretty cozy.
Very cozy indeed. It kind of becomes like almost a heist movie in reverse instead of how do we break in, how do we break out?
Yes, yeah, it's Ambrose and Eli, they find different ways to communicate, of course, magically, because, you know, they're all magical merchants and they work on a magic street and they figure it out. And so yeah, it's very much them working together on like, okay, how do we get it in, how do we get out? It's very much a potioneer heist, which was very fun and also a little challenging to write just because I don't have a lot of experience writing those kinds of scenes.
Don't have a lot of experience doing heists?
Yeah, no, can't say that I do. Can't say that's on my resume. But the other part that was kind of challenging was balancing Dawn's romance subplot, because it didn't make sense to pivot completely to her and Rory's POV because it is very much still an Ambrose Eli story. But it didn't make sense to have Ambrose Eli, Dawn, Rory, because I think that would have just made the book far too cluttered and far too bloated. And so I had to balance making the romance convincing through just Dawn's POV and also making sure the romance tied back to the main plot, so we didn't feel like we were swinging from one plot to another with those scenes. It's probably not something I would do in a new series, but I'm glad that I did it just to kind of experiment with that structure. There is going to be a subplot romance for somebody else in book 3, which I think is going to be very sweet. I'm very looking forward to that.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of plates to keep spinning.
Yeah, you've got like Ambrose and Nat's relationship, you've got Dawn's romance, you have, of course, the A plot of trying to rescue Ambrose, and then Eli has his own journey. So I guess spoilers for those of you who have not read book 1, but Eli kind of does a little career change at the end of book 1 to, something that he's very excited about. And there's certain elements of that new job that he is very good at, and one specific, very plot relevant aspect that he is not very good at. Cough, it's stealth.
Oh no.
So kind of exploring that aspect and how that frustrates him and how that connects to just kind of who he is as kind of like an energetic, impulsive, gotta go get him person, and how he needs to grow and how that impacts the rescue. So there was also that to balance. There's a lot going on in the book, but I think it's about the same length as Rival, so I think it will still be a pretty quick read for people.
It sounds like a rip snorting good time, honestly.
I mean, I hope so. And book 3 is going to be like, I want people to like book 2 so that they read book 3, because book 3 is important.
I mean, who would say no to 3 cozy adventures with our boys of Brew?
I mean, yeah, I really hope no one would say no. There's a really important scene in book 3. It's maybe related to Ambrose and Eli's relationship. It's big. You can probably guess what I'm talking about.
What could it be?
Whatever could it be? But yeah, I am really looking forward to writing those scenes. And, of course, as we mentioned earlier, talking about bumbling Rosamond Street, going on yet another adventure in maybe a different locale, and doing things that they're not used to.
Getting them slightly less cozy so we can resolve into a place that's cozier than ever before.
Yes. I would say it's not like, the danger will be treated more as like, kind of silly than, actual like dark. Like, we're not going into like, Baldur's Gate, Changeling, Merkel, and the Death Gods, and Praise the Absolute. Like, we're not going in that direction. This is very much just like, kind of like level 1 adventures, bumbling through stuff.
I will say, as someone who hasn't played the new Baldur's Gate and most of the old ones.
Oh, no. Was that all just word salad? Oh, God.
I feel like I got the gist.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of, of course.
Yes, praise the absolute, obviously.
Obviously. Who wouldn't?
All right, well, yeah, if somebody out there wants to talk to me about Baldur's Gate and the Absolute and Asterion, just DM me on Insta, I don't know.
Open invitation for Asterion feelings.
Oh, always.
Well, thank you for sharing all of this with us. I am so excited for book 2, perhaps even more so than I was before this interview began. In the meantime, where can folks pre-order it?
Yes, it should be available for pre-order, I want to say anywhere except, of course, Amazon doesn't do paperback pre-orders. And so I think Barnes & Noble is the main US one, and I'm slowly populating all of the international links, but it is available. There's a link on my site, and then also if you go to my Instagram and TikTok, there is a link tree there, and that'll take you to the pre-order link as well. If you do pre-order and if you fill out the form on my site, you'll get a sticker and bookmark and digital piece of extra art. And then, I will say, for those of you who are either ARC reading right now or those of you who read it later, there is a puzzle in the book and there is a little digital art prize if you solve the puzzle. That is all I will say.
For all of our puzzle lovers at home.
Mm-hmm. Sebastian may or may not have helped me test out the puzzle, so he knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I did play test the puzzle and discovered I am not very good at puzzles, but it was fun.
And that's okay. I made the puzzle easier.
So if you feel the puzzle is too easy,
blame Sebastian.
You know who to complain to.
No, I've had some folks be like, it was kind of difficult, but I figured it out. So I hope we have hit the right balance.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful journey.
Thank you.
And where can folks catch up with you online for A Captured Cauldron and sundry future works that I can't talk about but I'm bursting at the seams to talk about?
So I'm on Instagram and TikTok as RK Ashwick Books, and then I also have a website, rkashwick.com, and a newsletter where I send things like art and stories and art and stories.
The two best things to receive in a newsletter, frankly.
Yeah.
And excited to talk with you on another roundtable soon.
Awesome.